Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's show is just a tad different. We're back to politics, so that's not different because, I've talked politics on this show before. But what is different is that we're talking a little bit more local politics, politics that is very local to GE and I. However, the reason I really wanted to stream this is that even though this applies more to GE and I than anyone else, it is going to affect the entire country. And so I think everybody needs to know what's going on here in Alabama, because what's going on here in the Alabama is going to cost all y'all some money, some serious money trying to fight the ridiculousness. Now, before we get into this, I'm going to give people a little bit of a chance to get here and get us a decent audience going. So while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and let John and Rage Nakasuchi each introduce themselves and say hello and tell us a little bit about what they've got going on their own channel. So John, let's let you go first.
Hey everybody, I'm John, the Godless Engineer, and over on my channel, for the last couple weeks of the year, I'm going to be editing some previous live streams up and putting those out. But next week we'll be doing the Bible study again on Tuesday. So over on my channel, it's just it's a lot about atheism, a little bit about politics, and some about science. It's got a nice mix of a lot of things. So
you're the jack of all trades, just like me.
Yeah.
And Nako, what you got going on in your channel?
Always talking with Christians, arguing, having discussions. Focusing more on edited content again, trying to really get the edited content back out, and really looking at this coming year, focusing on atheism itself more and building community in atheism and talking to atheists and not so much to Christians. So, but yeah, always having the conversations and love the conversations. So that's what I do.
You had an interesting conversation earlier today that kind of went all over the place, didn't you?
It was strange, yeah, because I was intending to talk about, just my thoughts on going into the new year and how I wanted to kind of shy away from the toxic Christians that I've been talking to. And it ended up into a very toxic conversation with some Christians at several points. And it really ended in a very toxic place, and we just were all kind of dumbfounded by the things being said. But it also goes to show that even the reasonable Christians that I've talked to, once the hard questions start being asked and the unreasonable answers start coming. So yeah, it was very interesting. Wasn't expected today.
Okay. And we've got several people in the chat that I'd like to say hello to. Hello to B. Hello to Fran Wilson. Hello to Godless Sewing. And I know there's a few other people lurking there that I can't see, but those are the ones that I can see that have put something up. Robin is always lurking. So hello to Robin. And if anyone else is in the chat, just put up a little hello and I'll say hello back to you. Okay, turning to the topic for the night at hand. Mo Brooks is the representative for, are we the 5th district or the 6th district, John? Do you know?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I can look that
Let's
up.
see. No, I'll find it. I've got an article from the New York Times that has quite a bit about what's going on here that is quite helpful. Which I'm going to put up in just a moment. But basically, Mo Brooks is our congressional representative. Oh, here's Alexandria Ledgerwood from Michigan. Hello to Michigan. He is leading the charge to try to get Congress to overturn the election. When Congress meets here, I'll read the process here from the New York Times. Let me share screen and get this up here.
Yeah, and we're the 5th congressional district.
Fifth district. Okay, is that showing correctly?
It's not on my screen.
It's not on your screen. Okay. I forgot. I have trouble with share screen. There we go. Okay, here we go. This is an article from the New York Times from a week ago. Republicans are planning for a final showdown. They are almost certain to fail, but not before Vice President Mike Pence is thrust into having to declare President Trump the loser. The Electoral College's certification on Monday of President-elect Joseph Biden's victory left just one final venue for President Trump and his supporters to challenge the results of the 2020 election, a joint session of Congress in January. Every 4 years, the House and Senate come together to formally tabulate the electoral votes and raise any final concerns about the results. Normally, this is a perfunctory confirmation of the Electoral College vote. But this year, some of the president's most strident supporters are threatening to transform it into a messy last stand by objecting to the results. They are all but certain to fail, but not before a potentially divisive spectacle on the floor of the House could thrust Vice President Mike Pence into the politically perilous position of confirming that Trump lost. And they go into how the process works. And the person that is leading the charge on that is our own Mo Brooks. And there has to be there we go. There has to be a challenge in both the House and in the Senate. And Mo Brooks is the one that is wanting to bring the charge in the House. And guess who wants to bring the same charge in the Senate? Tommy Tuberville, newly elected senator from Alabama, whose only qualification for senator was he was fired as the coach from Auburn, as an Auburn football coach. Now, credit where credit is due. Tuberville's entire platform as he was running for Senate was, I will be a Trump puppet. So at least you can say this for the man. He is being true to his word. And the first thing he wants to do when he gets into the Senate is act like a Trump puppet. And, the thing that really outrages me is that, as the New York Times points out, this is certain to fail. There is just no merit to this whatsoever. And it's just going to cost the taxpayers time and effort to listen to all of these ridiculous arguments and then turn them down. And GE, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, yeah, it's so crazy that they're exhausting all of these avenues to what would literally be the destruction of our current system of government. Because if they were to succeed in everything that they want to do, they just want to outright declare Trump to be the victor and give him the presidency and all that. That essentially nullifies like our entire democratic process that we use to choose our representatives. And it's so weird to me that they are so blatantly like putting it out there that they hate the representative republic that we live in and that we have, become accustomed to for over 200 years. Mm-hmm. It astounds me that they don't see a problem with just handing Trump the victory and making Trump, the president against the will of the majority of the population. It's just so crazy to me. I think Tuberville, which I don't know what he got fired for from Auburn University, but Tuberville just strikes me as a dipshit. Yeah. Mainly not only because he was like, I'm going to be a Trump puppet, but also like during like all of his campaign stuff, one thing stuck out to me, and he was like, I'm going to protect our Second Amendment rights. Doug Jones doesn't want you to have Second Amendment rights or something like that. I'm like, who out there is saying anything about the Second Amendment right now? Like, there's nobody out there that's concerned about the Second Amendment. Why are you making this an issue? Like, not even Doug Jones has a problem with the Second Amendment. I mean, I'm fairly certain that he says that he has guns.
They go back there. Like, I had that conversation with my daughter's grandpa today, and he brought that up, and he was like, they're never going to take our guns, and I'm like, nobody wants to take your guns. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, but it's like now they're pulling all the old arguments out of the woodwork as well, because like we haven't talked about guns since Obama. But yeah, it's funny that people are going there now. I don't get it either.
Fran is with you all the way, Naka.
Oh, I missed it. Oh yeah, I see it now. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's fascism. It's fascism rearing its ugly head. The party falling into line, and when you have the one guy just saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a Trump puppet," that's one thing. But to just see so many that are falling in line, I think it was like 19 attorneys general signed that crazy lawsuit from Texas. And the rhetoric coming out of the White House right now, we see fascism rearing its ugly head. And as Godless Engineer was pointing out, elected officials willing to see the just absolutely burn down the fabrics of any democracy that we have here. And if they were to do that, if the Senate were to declare Donald Trump the winner, I'm going to state, you're starting a civil war. Blood will be spilled in the streets. People are going to be fighting. They're not going to just take that. This is how insurgencies start.
Well, no, they're already planning for a civil war.
Really?
Yeah. So if you anybody out there that's on Twitter, you got to follow Right Wing Watch, because they have the juiciest shit that is being said right now, and multiple people on the far right are calling for like a civil war to keep Donald Trump in office. And they're talking about becoming violent and all this other stuff. Now, whether or not they'll actually do it, I'm hoping they don't, because that would just be dumb. But it's just the fact that they have no problems like just saying, "Oh, we're going to start a civil war over this." I mean, the fact that they could just say that so freely and happily, it seems like with a lot of passion, that right there in and of itself should scare people. But I don't know. What do you guys think about the possibility of Civil War II?
I think it's really I thought it was a serious possibility back in 2016, and I think that we're closer and closer to it than we've ever been before. I think essentially since the inception of the country, this country has been deeply divided on matters of race and what the country's supposed to be about. The Civil War was kind of a Band-Aid on that, but it was like a Band-Aid on an infested wound. There was no antiseptic there, and we kind of pushed race issues down, especially after Jim Crow, and now we're kind of seeing that come to the surface. And I remember the night when the Electoral College voted for Joe Biden to be president. I was considering on going on Parler because I wanted to see what they were saying there, and people convinced me out of that, don't give yourself nightmares tonight. And I'm glad I didn't, because the very next day I saw exactly what Godless Engineer is talking about. A lot of posts that people did go to Parler. They were posting them on Twitter, and they were talking secession. They were seceding, and it's us against them. And it would be your guys' state. Alabama would be one of those states that would be seceding from the Union. And that's civil war. That's exactly right. And they are talking about right now, with General Flynn and the White House on Friday, Trump is considering using the military to instate martial law and keep the government. Really scary. Yeah. And
I don't think it's going to come to civil war. And And the reason why is partly because it's too difficult to draw lines of secession.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, and Tennessee, and probably Kentucky
yeah.
would
I don't
be,
think civil war. So yeah, maybe civil insurgency. Like
yes,
what you
yes.
saw in Iraq. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see pockets of violence.
Yeah, and we're going to see it in the big cities, like what we
Yeah.
saw in Chicago and Portland and New York with the race issues. Yeah, I think we might see more civil insurgency.
Yeah, and to Fran Wilson, who just said, I too do not think the military is going to support a coup. If it's a legal order, the military has to follow it. But I mean, this would not be, I don't think, by anybody's standard, a legal order. So
Yeah,
I do not think the military would follow such an order.
and the military is very divided when it comes to Trump.
Yeah, and I think the majority of them voted for Biden. A good chunk of them actually consider Trump to be traitorous. So yeah, I don't think unless they've been collecting loyalists inside the military, which is possible. That's what a fascist would do. Over the last 4 years, I'm not really too worried about that option. It's just it is being talked about.
Yeah, there's a lot of like former generals out there that have come up with like just wild, crazy ideas about how Trump can retain his presidency. So I really hope, which I haven't seen a lot of worrisome like generals and stuff that have been around him. I just really hope that they are at least of sound mind and not like on the crazy train, because there's so many people out there that's just went off the rails with it. Because but Michael Flynn, I mean, he used to be a general. There was another general recently that spouted off some kind of crazy idea about how Trump can remain president. I think that it might have just been the instilling or doing the Insurrection Act and like just not transferring power. But yeah, I don't think that the military would support a coup. But it really does kind of depend on like the commanders, like all the generals and everybody that would be in control of the army. I think it would kind of be up to them as to whether or not they want to follow the law. But I think that most of them have a good head, on their shoulders. So I don't think it'll come to that. And earlier when I said civil war, in my head, I had just pictured what you guys were talking about with like pockets of civil unrest or whatnot. I guess I really didn't consider it to be like, oh, states secede and they're going to form like an army out of this new country, Trumplandia, or something like that. I was actually just thinking about like individual forces like causing like riots or shooting liberals in the streets or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that there's definitely going to be some people that are very upset, come January 20th. I know I saw a post on Twitter where a guy, I guess he posted on TikTok, but he was like supposedly intimidating or attacking Joe Biden. It was like a mannequin. It was like one of those martial arts practicing dummies, and he was like getting all up in his face and like punching him and everything like that, and he made a pedophile joke for some reason, which is really kind of odd when you think about it, because they are sitting there calling Joe Biden a pedophile, but at the same time your current president knowingly walked into a little girl's changing room regardless of whether or not he owned the pageant. He shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, and I do believe there's still, I mean, she was 16 at the time, the allegation from the 16-year-old girl at the time of rape that totally got washed over because he won the presidency. Who knows if that's accurate? We never got to see because it never saw litigation or any investigation as far as I know. Yeah, and just so many stories outside of that. The fact that Joe Biden, while being a Catholic, is a staunch Catholic, and Donald Trump is totally not. Like, he used to claim to be an atheist, and I often joke I'm glad that the Christians took him back, but I'm not, because it's disastrous for the country. So yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, because even these idiots on Parler could be talking about secession. We'll never get there. It'll be more like what GE is saying, and I think that it'll be, especially if Trump is successful in all of this, and he actually remains in power on the 21st. I think the pockets you're going to see are going to be leftist, and that's going to kind of be a wake-up call, because they've spent all these decades trying to say that leftists are against guns when a vast majority of leftists aren't. A lot of leftists are actually fairly revolutionary, and you can't be revolutionary without guns. So I think that you'll see a lot of pockets of violence going against the new fascist government, if there is indeed a takeover.
I think the biggest challenge for the first year of Biden's presidency is obviously COVID is going to be number one, but I think number two is going to be smoothing things over, and he's already started working on this, is trying to say, look, we are not enemies here. There's a really good video of John McCain saying the same thing in the election where he was running against Obama, and some woman getting up and saying, I heard Obama is a Muslim, and John McCain says to her, look, I don't like Mr. Obama's policies. I don't agree with his policies, but he's not a Muslim. I don't hate him. He's not a bad man. I just don't agree with his policies. And that's the feeling that we've got to return to in this country, that we can disagree on policy without being at each other's throats.
Well, yeah, and there's one side of the country that looks at McCain doing that, and we can applaud that. And then there's the other side, unfortunately, most of his party that saw that as weakness. And I think that's the political divide. It's been in the country for so long. It's so ingrained now. And when you have, it started with the Tea Party, when you have politicians willing to perpetuate the extreme narrative, and then once you have a president who is embodying the extreme narrative, you see empires fall. And we're at a very dangerous part of history right now. I think we're at a very dangerous part of history. In a month, we're going to see where we fall. But even then, like, if the good guys win, right? Like, if Biden is in power like he should be, as G said, there's going to be a lot of people in this country that's going to be really angry about that. And they're going to be angry because democracy was carried through. So either way we go, there's going to be animosity, and that's unfortunate, because it shouldn't. A free election shouldn't end that way. Like, we all hated when Trump was president, but we eventually came to terms with it, right? Like, in our own ways, in our own time, and now it doesn't even seem like they're going to have that chance, because they're just trying to take it.
Yeah. And that brings up something that, I was looking at and kind of scratching my head over, was when Trump was saying that, how could I possibly get, how many votes did he get? 74 million votes and still lose the election? And well, the obvious answer is because Biden got 80 million votes. And, and he's saying, this has never happened, therefore it cannot happen. I thought, that's like arguing that no football team that was down by 21 points in the first half of the Super Bowl has ever lost. Therefore, even though you lost the Super Bowl, you really won. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you lost.
They used to say if you were down 3-0 in the World Series, it was an impossibility until the Arizona Diamondbacks did it, right? It's the dumbest. And again, we knew this was going to happen. We knew that by making voting for mail accessible to every American from home because of this pandemic, we were going to get unprecedented numbers of votings. Like, we knew that was going to happen. You allow access to voting to where you don't have to go wait in line for 12 hours. People are going to vote. I mean, this is actually the model for what we should move. If you really want to get that younger generation involved in voting, we've seen how to do it now. You use this new model, because you don't make them go wait in line. They're too busy for that, right? So we had this new model. We knew what was going to happen. but they knew what was going to happen as well, and they were prepared for that. This whole notion, like they say, it's impossible that he could be down in Michigan here the way he was on election night, and then the next morning he's not down, and in fact Joe Biden's up by however many. No, it's not impossible. We actually knew that was going to happen because the Republicans here stopped them from being able to count those early mail-in votings until election night, and we knew that those votes were for Joe Biden. So we knew that was going to happen. It's not impossible. It was predictable.
The other thing that has really got me scratching my head, and I never thought I would see the day when I actually liked something that Mitch McConnell was doing, because Mitch McConnell is telling the people in the Senate not to challenge the vote. Yeah, this is not the way to do it. This is not how democracy works. And he's already congratulated Biden. Biden's been elected. Just let it go.
Very surprising move. Go ahead, John. I've been talking a lot.
No, yeah, I think that the turtle that was a very surprising move by the human-sized turtle, and I think that he's not exactly going to find himself in good company after that. I'm always I think that every Republican that doesn't unequivocally stand with Trump should be worried all the time. Because it's so crazy how ridiculously like cult-minded the Republicans have become. Not all Republicans, obviously, because there are some Republicans that haven't drank the Kool-Aid, but I think a lot of them, for the most part, are Republican just so that they're Republican. But like as if to say it's not really about what you would typically consider conservative ideals or anything like that. It's just for the pure and simple fact of being on Trump's side.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure like both of y'all living in Alabama can remember what Republicans used to be, right? Like I used to be a conservative Republican. And yeah, I had my bigotries, but that came from my family. My politics was all about fiscal conservatism and small government and all of that. Those were the good old days, right?
Mm-hmm. I was a Republican until Obama came.
It was 9/11 and Bush for me. That's what really pushed me into the liberal camp. Before that, I was kind of like struggling with it, I think. But at first, I was all gung ho. I was with everybody else that whole 9/11. But once like the dust settled and I started looking at things and I saw the Patriot Act and I'm like, wait a minute, and then that pushed me to the left, and then I've been just going farther and farther ever since.
And this brings us to another point that Naka and I were discussing a little bit before we came on, and that is that I really think that Trump is our current age Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy was able to keep a committee on un-American activities, and he accused all kinds of people of being communist, and getting labeled communist by Joe McCarthy was the death knell of your career. And it's the same thing with Trump. You cross Trump, and Trump is going to, anyone who crosses Trump isn't going to get reelected. And I think we need to see a lot of Republicans getting reelected despite crossing Trump.
Mm-hmm. I agree wholeheartedly with that, and he's doing a lot of the things that McCarthy was doing. You hear socialism, you hear communism a lot, pointing the finger, un-American, America first. All of these are really fascist tendencies, and I consider McCarthy to be an atrocious douchebag that tried to bring fascism to America and almost succeeded. And doing it by utilizing fear techniques, propaganda techniques. You create an enemy, and then once you have that enemy, you perpetuate that propaganda, and you create an element of pointing the finger. This has been going on in America since the Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy for me because I don't see, like, as far as being part of the Republican Party and having Trump denounce you, it's definitely kind of like a hiccup in your career. But like, Trump's not exactly. It's like Trump's painting the media as the bad guy as well as the leftist, and which Fox News has actually come up under that scrutiny since Election Day. That apparently they're part of the bad side of the media or whatnot.
Yeah, they made the mistake of reporting the election accurately.
Exactly. But like, he's painting all of them as the bad guys, but like, while he's like waving his hand, in one direction, like, oh, the media, election fraud, and all this other stuff. Over here, you've got fucking Russia hacking our government systems and like launching a cyber attack on us. And then Trump's like, oh yeah, I know, but look over here at this thing over here, election fraud. Come on, guys. I find that to be very just insane that our current president is not even addressing a major cyber attack, at least not publicly in any kind of way, but instead of reassuring the American people that Russia isn't going to like do any kind of major damage, he's over here like, election fraud. I got millions of votes in California, and I actually won California. I don't know if he said that. A lot of his supporters has said that he would win California for some weird reason. But it's just, I don't know. I find it really crazy that they're so ultra American that they're gonna let America or the United States get attacked by a foreign government. Like, it seems so fucking weird to me.
Yeah, and the little bit that he has commented on that, he's pretty much saying that wasn't Russia, that was China.
Oh yeah, yes. I remember that. Yeah, he tried to redirect it to it being China's fault. It's like, what?
Yeah, like, no, even Pompeo, your stooge in the State Department, even that guy says it. No, it was Russia. And they don't understand that. Is either they're blind to it, they want to be blind to it. But this has been like this. He has blatantly just given Putin a pass. And that was the criticism of Obama, that they had, Obama gave him that pass. You remember Obama on that hot mic where he told that ambassador, like, Trump is just like, no, like, Putin is the greatest human being ever. And Republicans are like, yeah, he is the greatest human being ever. I don't understand it either, GE. It's... there's no consistency. Like, this is not the Republican Party I remember being a part of way back in the day, and that was way back in the day. But they're just, it's all about hate the other side now, and it's not about like what. All right, so you hate us, I get that, but what do you really stand for? Because that small government thing's out the window with Trump. The deficit thing's out the window with Trump. They try to pretend like they're anti-war now because of Trump, and no, Trump's not anti-war. They're not anti-war. I don't even understand what the Republican Party is outside of Trump now.
Now, I don't know if you guys. This is, I guess, maybe a little off subject, but did you guys see where Mike Pence was giving a speech about somewhere about something? But he's like, the liberals want to make the richer poorer and the poor comfortable. And it's like,
yeah, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Like, no, I didn't see that, but I would be like, yeah.
Well, see, here's the weird thing that I don't know, like, if the people that are seriously listening to Pence will really think about. But if you were to make, like, Amazon pay, let's say, $50 billion in taxes, right? If you were to make them pay that much, they would still have like $130 billion, you know? So, which that's an unreasonable tax for any single year. I think Amazon last year had to pay like 132 million or something like that. But that was the first time they had to pay taxes in 2 years. You know,
and that's still just like a fraction of what they're bringing in.
Oh yeah, and if it's not they want to make the rich poorer, it's that they want to slightly affect how rich the rich are. Like that's what they want to. That's what anybody on the left that wants to tax, put more of a tax on the rich and less on the poor. Like it's like, oh fuck, the poor want to be comfortable. Oh
yeah, and you're exactly like that is the liberal position, is to tax the rich fairly, right? A fair tax on the rich. The rich can still be rich. The leftist socialist position, of course, is billionaires shouldn't exist, and that's my position, because they shouldn't. Like, I posted a meme. I'm not sure how accurate this meme is. It's a meme. I posted it today. I'm sure it's somewhat accurate, but it's like people don't understand what $1 billion is. Like we would consider $10,000 a lot of money, right? $10,000, that's a lot of money. According to this meme, so take it as a grain of salt, you can make $10,000 a day since 1976 or 1776. You could have made $10,000 a day since 1776, and you would not have $1 billion. That's how much $1 billion is. It's this ungodly amount of money that no one human being needs if anybody's suffering from hunger. Just it's to me is, but I'm a leftist. GE is exactly right. The liberal position, the liberal position here in America is to tax the rich fairly, and that means actually tax them, not give them loopholes to escape taxation. Actually be taxed. Because right now, a lot of them, they're not taxed. They have loopholes, and most of their money goes offshore. So we've got to stop that. If Trump would have done that, I would have applauded it. Unfortunately, he made that worse.
Yeah. and unfortunately, his money base. That's who his money base is, because his money base is people that do have a lot of money. And they will share it with him to help him so that he will protect them. And all the tax cuts that he had, he threw a little, what's the word I'm looking for? He threw a pittance toward the middle class so that they wouldn't oppose the tax cuts, but it really was all about supporting the rich.
Yeah, and that's. Starting this year, the severely impoverished people of this country, they have to pay more in taxes because of Trump's quote unquote tax cut. If you make less than, I think it's $75,000 a year, maybe it's $35,000. But like the poorest of the poor people in America actually have to pay more in taxes starting this year.
Yep. So, John, one thing I was wondering about was your thoughts on, is Trump a fascist?
Well, I mean, he loves fascist dictators.
Yeah.
He himself has exhibited many fascist tendencies. I mean, if it walks like a duck and it's talking like a duck and it idolizes other ducks, chances are he's a duck. I think that if he could like unequivocally just place himself as a dictator over the United States and stay in power until he dies, I think that Trump would jump at that.
There's no question.
Yeah.
He was posting that on Twitter, Trump 2020, Trump 2024, 2028, 2032. He was trying to make it so that he could stay forever.
Yeah, and I mean, even his supporters want that, because like as early as I think probably the 2018 midterms, I was seeing like these Trumps. Not Trumps, these T-shirts that had a list of the quote unquote Trump dynasty. And that was like a plan for there to be a Trump in the White House for the next like 20 years or something like that. And it's just so crazy.
They're talking about Ivanka running.
And I actually think Ivanka is too inept, and she would actually give herself away. But I do fear not the next Trump, because like his children are barely human. Let's be honest. I mean, they're not the brightest apples in the bunch. I'm more worried about the next Trump that comes along, but just does it better. Isn't like, inept about it like Trump has been, just like blatantly, hey, I'm a fascist, everybody, look at me. No, I'm worried about the next Trump that's not like that, but is just a politician fascist. And that's what I really, really worry about, is that somebody that takes this Trump playbook and utilizes it in a much more sneaky way and isn't so out in the open about it. That's where Trump went wrong. If he'd have just been a fascist behind the scenes, he probably would have got away with it. But those damn kids. Scooby-Doo reference, sorry. And it's funny, like, because they'll argue with me about it, and you're right, G. If it walks like a duck, you have to call it a duck. We have a definition for what fascism is. He fits that definition to a T. And right now, with the things that you're talking about happening in your state, the things that are happening in D.C., the even consideration of giving an order as the commander in chief to utilize the American military to secure the ballots in swing states that he lost, we are seeing fascism rear its ugly head, and we're at a very pivotal moment in history, because if the party falls in line, we could be in trouble.
Let's talk about that for a bit. You're talking about declaration of martial law, right?
Yes. Yep. That's what's on the table right now, is appointing the QAnon lady. I can never remember her name, Cynthia something or another, as a special White House prosecutor or whatever they are, that she will seize the ballots from these swing states that Trump lost, bringing the military to install martial law and redo the election in those swing states that Trump lost. So you secure the ballots, you secure the power, and then you control the new election, securing your victory. This is a classic fascism. This is in the fascist playbook. You don't get out. I mean, if Hitler were to write a playbook on how to win an election, or Putin for that matter, this would be it.
John, what are your thoughts? Do you think that's even possible?
I mean, is it? Hold on. Is what possible again?
Trump declaring martial law, having the military go and seize the ballots in the swing states, so that basically they would turn over the election.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think that he has the power to impose martial law or whatnot, at least through the Insurrection Act, maybe. I mean, I'm not exactly sure that his route to do that, but I mean, I think that if Trump could easily get away with it, he would probably do that, which is kind of another kind of mind boggle there, because traditionally Republicans, they don't want a big government, right? Yeah. I mean, they want a small government. It seems pretty antithetical to being a Republican to want the government to
take over everything.
Martial law. Mm-hmm. So it just seems a little weird. What it really means is that as far as the Republicans go, is that they want the government to stay out of all of the rich people's business, but they want to be able to extend their influence throughout the country using the government, and they want the government in everybody else's business, is what it really means.
Yeah, one of the things that I am also scratching my head over is, they only want to overturn the election in the swing states. Make sure you leave alone the states that voted for Trump. And obviously, the whole point is to give Trump the win. But if your whole point is, there's been massive voter fraud and there's been, massive numbers of ballots that have been illegally cast, then if that were the case, which obviously it's not, because the evidence just isn't there. Trump has been given, and his whole team has been given chance after chance after chance after chance to produce some kind of evidence, and it just isn't there. But if it was, you'd have to overturn the whole election, not just certain states.
And two of those states are deeply, deeply Republican institutions. We're talking Georgia and Nevada here, right? But let's leave Nevada out of it. Let's just talk about Georgia. We're talking about a governor in Kemp who is being sued by the USLA because he stole the election in 2018 to become governor. And one of these talking points is, it's impossible what happened in Georgia. More people voted for Joe Biden than Obama. Yeah, because in 2018, Kemp denied hundreds of thousands of the black vote and stole that election. This is a man that stole an election successfully. And he, with his hands tied behind his back, said, "Hey, Trump, I can't cheat for you. This is after the election, dog." Like, we should have done this months ago. Trump is saying that is your Joe Biden plant. That Kemp is your Joe Biden. No, dude, it doesn't work that way. Like, you had to collude with Kemp for months ahead of this election, so he could have denied the black vote. But you had Stacey Abrams in that state reminding everybody every single day about the election that was stolen 2 years ago. Every single day, and she's doing it right now in Georgia to get these 2 Senate seats. So they are in absolute denial of the reality of their situation here. Absolutely, and to GE's point, where is the Republican Party? Because we don't have a Republican Party anymore. We don't have I've always argued with them about what small government means, because they think small government means social safety nets. I think big government means a massive military on world conquest proportions. To me, that's big government. They don't seem to agree with me on that. But where are they at now? Like, as GE was saying.
The one thing that I've seen out of all of this that could be a very good thing is we could see the splintering of the Republican Party, because the Tea Party is talking about possibly splintering off and making their own party, and the white supremacists are kind of splintering off and wanting to do their thing, and some of the evangelicals are even leaving Trump. I mean, I couldn't believe it when Pat Robertson came out and said, Trump needs to let this go. It's over. And so I'm thinking, we may have something good come out of this. We might see a splintering and a fracturing of the Republican Party and possible a return to normalcy. I don't know. Maybe it's wishful thinking.
I hope so. I think a lot of that's going to be, I don't like this term, but I'm going to use it right now, fate. Because if Donald Trump goes on for several years, very healthy and very vocal on whatever atrocious news network this guy starts when he's out of office, the Republican Party could be a mess for quite a long time. If he goes away in the night and once he's gone, Republicans ignore him, then yeah, I think we could see that. Yeah,
that's what I am really hoping for is people to just plain ignore him. I even would like to see Democrats and liberals ignore him, because
me too.
When we and here we are paying attention to him right here in the stream. So I'm violating what I'm saying as I'm saying it. But
well, right now we have to. But like once he's gone,
once he's gone, yeah, we need to ignore him and pretend like he never happened. No.
Yeah, we, unless it's like, like the Southern District, like arresting him, then we can applaud. But no, I totally agree, because wherever he goes after this, he's clearly got it in mind that he's going to either run a shadow government, he's going to have the real government, or he's going to be president again in 2024. That's what all of this is a play for, right? Like, it's one of those 3 things. So whatever happens from that, I think the less we talk about him moving forward, the less likelihood that 2024 thing becomes a reality, because a lot of Republicans waiting in the wing. Marco Rubio, he thought it was his day in 2016. I don't really see him biding that party line for too long because he wants to be president. So we'll see. Power always gets the best of these greedy people.
Well, yeah. So I mean, I really don't think that Trump's going any way anytime soon, because I mean, while yeah, it would be nice to just let him fade into obscurity, you also have to acknowledge the fact that 74 million Americans voted for him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And would rather have someone that is on a daily basis, like threatening our government in general, like our democratic representative republic. Like he threatened, like every day that he continues the charade of wanting to stay in office and trying to figure out ways to stay in office, and promoting election fraud and stuff like that. That's harmful to our government, like in general. So I think that his supporters are not going to let him go so easily.
And I do think, I think me and Granny are having some wishful thinking here, because I think you're exactly right. And unfortunately, I've seen that with a person that I really like today, a person that's always been there for my daughter. Is a good man. He's a good man. He just doesn't understand. And he believes every word Trump says, every word, even without evidence. And I sat here for an hour and I explained things to him, and he nodded his head, and I totally know that he didn't hear a word of that I said, because I'm a liberal. And it's worse than that. He knows I'm a socialist, but like that doesn't. I'm a liberal, so yeah. I'll just sit here. I'll nod. I'll agree. You hate Trump. I get it. That's what happened. You can't explain to them the truth, because they believe every single word he says.
John, do you think we're living in a new normal that differs from what we lived in before Trump?
Well, maybe, but I mean, there's just been so much that has transpired in the past 4 years that would have contributed to this new normal. I think that probably not directly because of Trump. I think that the pandemic has actually had more of an effect on what any new normal would be, because we've definitely figured out which meetings could have really been just a phone call, right? I think that telework's going to be a lot more prominent, and I feel like the Republicans and everybody that believes in all these conspiracy theories as far as how to keep Trump in office, they've got one of two directions to go. Either they wake up from their drunken stupor and they put their hand on their head and they're like, "Oh my God, what did I say last night? I was so drunk." Oh,
Yep.
like there's that way, or they just continue hitting the whiskey and they just keep going deeper into the rabbit hole until they're flat earthers. Excuse me. They're flat earthers on YouTube, trying to show us how the lizard people didn't want Trump to be president, so they made Biden president. And I feel like those are the two directions that they have to go in now. So I think it really is kind of up to the Republican Party as to whether or not they're going to come out of the crazy. Because if they come out of the crazy, then I don't really think too much has changed, at least not in comparison to, like things that have happened in the past. Of course, we had a lot of major things happen, like BLM has had more exposure this year, especially. But then prior to that, you had the Me Too movement. I think it's still technically going on, and as far as the election goes, you had Stacey Abrams over in Georgia, who got 800,000 people registered. Isn't that the right number? I think.
Mm-hmm.
800.
Yep.
Yeah, she herself got 800,000 people registered, and this particular election has had more people vote in it than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
And consequently, Joe Biden is the most vetted presidential president-elect that there's ever been because of how much fraud people are saying is going around. So, I mean, I really don't think that the new normal is because of Trump necessarily or anything like that. I think that it's an amalgam of different things, and I think that whatever new normal we're presented with, I think that it'll ultimately end up being for the better, hopefully. But that's going to kind of depend on whether or not the Republicans sober up a little bit.
The one thing that I really would like to see us go back to, and I don't know if it's possible, but really I think this is absolutely crucial, is we've got to go back to seeing the media being the fourth estate. I think Trump's declaring the media to be fake news and the enemy of the country has done more damage, because that's what laid the groundwork for not believing the scientists when the pandemic came, and not believing the black people with the Black Lives Matter movement. He just declares anything he doesn't like to be fake. And his followers don't believe it. And I think we've got to get back to having some trust in the fourth estate.
Well, I think he definitely damaged the true problems with mainstream media, because your mainstream media is it has constitutional protections. It's what's needed to really stand in the face of government and expose the truth, to show what government is doing. And the real issue with media isn't so much that it's fake news, and that's where he really corrupted the conversation, is that it's narrative news, usually mainly propagated by oligarchs, and they're propagating an oligarchy narrative. And that goes for both sides, whether it be your lefty media, which they say lefty media is CNN and MSNBC, and it really isn't. It's more of a moderate media, and Fox and your right-wing media. So media has its issues. And what Trump has done is he hijacked that issue and he utilized it in propaganda and fear tactics to create that enemy, to where we need to be having a rational discussion about how to fix media again. And it's very simple solutions. There's just 2 or 3 laws that were passed that people don't know about, that we just got to repeal and bring media back to what media should be. Unfortunately, Trump has corrupted that entire conversation over the last 4 years. And I don't really know how you repair it. Long after Trump is gone, there's really no repairing that conversation now because of the damage he's done to it.
Now, John has a standing appointment at 8:00. So I knew when I started the stream that John would have to get going by around 8. So let's let John have a chance to, any closing thoughts, anything else you'd like to bring up, John?
Yeah. So while thank you so much, Granny, for having me on tonight. I always love coming on to your channel and talking with you about all these topics. But
Well, thank you. That really pleases me.
One of the things that's kind of crazy that I just kind of juxtapose the two in my head is that, Clinton, he got into a lot of trouble. I believe Clinton got impeached for,
Yes, he did.
for having some fellatio in the Oval Office and lying about it. Or he was lying about it. he was impeached for lying about that incident. But now we have verified information that shows that Donald Trump lied to the American people about COVID-19, and subsequently people died. And I'm not saying that it's mainly because he played it down, but did lie to the American people. Well, yeah. So technically, he wasn't under oath, but uh, yeah. So sorry, Casey's corrected me. Clinton was under oath. Trump was not under oath in this particular thing. I find it kind of odd how the two compare to each other. I mean,
Yeah.
the lie that Trump made was significantly more important, at least to me, than I feel like Clinton's was. But in any case, I just thought about that and thought I'd voice my thoughts on that part. But anyways, I do have to go. But like I said, it was awesome seeing you here, Granny, being on your channel. Thank you so much for having me. Rage, I'm so glad that I got to talk to you again. And
Hey, man.
I guess I'll see everybody later. Y'all have a great night and a Merry Christmas.
Oh yeah,
Merry
have a great night, dude.
Bye, GE.
Bye.
Okay. I usually like to take this program for about 90 minutes, and so we're going to continue on. There's quite a bit of talk in the chat about the Black Lives Matter movement, and maybe we can turn to that for a bit because I think that is important. When I did a stream and I had Cynthia McDonald on, one of her biggest concern in voting for Biden, and she said she was not going to vote for Biden only because she felt that the Democratic Party really was not addressing the issues that were important to Black voters, and I think she had a point.
Oh, yeah.
I was extremely disappointed during the debates when Biden was asked if he supported Black Lives Matter, and he never really answered the question. Now, to be fair, he was asked two questions and he spent his whole time on the other one. But I thought this was so important that he should have at least said it.
Well, yeah, and Biden is mainly responsible for the atrocious 90s crime bill that he gets lumped with and justifiably so. That for me is going to honestly be the greatest day when Biden takes power. And he's actually sitting in the presidency, because on that day I can stop defending him and I can start attacking him. Biden, and her point, and Cynthia's point, I think is spot on, especially for progressives, or if you're farther left than what a liberal is. A lot of people think that liberals are progressives and socialists, and that's not the case. She thought that we should re-elect Trump, basically give Trump back the presidency, but vote down ballot and and make sure that we secured power in the House and Senate. And looking back at the election and seeing how it's all turning out, I'm not sure that she was wrong. I think maybe we lost a little bit of focus on down ballot and focus more on that major ticket. And with Joe Biden, you have problems. I was a supporter of Bernie Sanders, and that,
I was too.
so Biden for me was one of the worst because of his record when it came to police. And he's already stated, like, his idea of reforming police is putting more money in the budget. And he says that's for better training. Well, when you put more money in the budget, it never goes towards training. It always goes towards equipment. They don't spend their time on training. That's the problem. So I think that he's deeply misguided. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris as his VP doesn't assuage that fear for us progressives that he's not going to be progressive enough on this issue. He isn't going to be. She's a former prosecutor. To me, that was kind of like a slap in the face of the Black Lives Matter movement to name her as vice president. You could have named Stacey Abrams very easily.
I don't think he could. I do not think he could have brought in Stacey Abrams. As much as I would have liked to have seen Stacey Abrams as vice president, she just wasn't quite ready for the job. I think Stacey needs 4 more years in the spotlight, 4 more years.
Well, and I do agree with that to a point. But I think it could have been, if you were going to take what's happening in the streets seriously, like the Black Lives Matter, anybody but Kamala. She's a former prosecutor and she sides with the police on most issues. So even if she's had recent statements that are more progressive in nature towards police, I don't believe it. I'll believe it in 4 years. If she shows me that, I'll be more than happy to cast a vote for her. We'll see about Joe. But I need to see that to believe it. She's a former prosecutor and she's known for supporting police. So to me, it was a bad pick on that part. But a very historic pick. So, looking at it from that perception of the Black Lives Matter movement, not a great pick. But overall, for the nation, I think an excellent choice. Of many firsts that needed to happen, a lot of glass ceilings shattered. So I applaud it. I just think in this particular instance, not the best choice.
And Levi Hoover says, Bernie would have made the best VP, and I disagree. Even though politically, ideally, policy-wise, yes, I would agree with you. I think that a Sanders ticket would have been a huge turnoff to too many demographics because it's one more, two old white men on the ticket. And
the party's split now. Bernie did the right thing. He supported Biden to get Trump out. He did the right thing, and I'm never going to take that away from Bernie. But the lines have been drawn in the Democratic Party. The moderates versus the leftist is there. Once Biden gets into power, that battle is going to start being fought. But we got to get Biden into power first because we got to get the fascists out. But I mean, once Biden's there and he's secure, then the Democratic Party is going to be defined because the Democratic Party is really honestly they're going to lose their base because the base is progressive. The base is farther left than the Democratic Party is, and that's got to be resolved because if it's not resolved, Trump's going to win in 2024 or if he's still around.
Yeah. One of the things that happened in this election that was a big shocker to me, and it shouldn't be, but it's just that, how isolationist we have been up until recently, in talking to so many people from Australia and finding out that not only are they automatically registered to vote as soon as they become adults, but voting is required in Australia. And I thought, wow, what a difference we would have in our elections if we had to vote instead of having voting being an option. And not only is voting an option, but we make it difficult for people to vote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the proponents against the Australian system is, well, it's un-American. You can't make people vote. And they don't understand that in Australia, while you're required to go and cast a ballot, you don't have to put anything on it. It's called grey voting. You don't have to cast a vote if you don't want to, but you are required to show up and do what I consider to be a legal duty. I think that it should be. I am for mandatory voting here in America. I think that the more involved you are I always thought before, the more involved you are in politics, the more you'll come to a reasonable conclusion politically. Unfortunately, that's been tested the last 4 years because a lot more people are more politically involved and they haven't come to reasonable political conclusions, but they've also had a madman at the helm. So if he gets off of the helm, maybe it'll start to work like it should. But I do believe that like if you institute a program requiring people to vote, whether they institute their freedom not to vote when they get to that poll, then that should be the system. But I also think that COVID changed everything, and I think that this should be the system moving forward. I think that mail-in voting should be the system moving forward, and I think that if anything, this election taught us that those early mail-in votes should be counted before election night, because that's where the issue is coming. That's where all the issues are coming from.
And actually, it isn't entirely new with COVID because there's a number of states, Washington State being one of them, where this has always been part of the voting. They've always had mail-in voting. But one of the other things I want to bring up is, one of the issues you frequently hear from Republicans is, we've got to have signature verification, and without signature verification, you could have voting fraud. And yeah, you could. You're right that it's possible. But one of the things that people who advocate for this don't realize is how difficult it is to get a ID here in Alabama.
Mhm.
When I moved to Alabama, I wanted to transfer my driver's license from Indiana to Alabama, a process that takes all of 5 minutes. But I went down to the the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, and first I was warned, don't even go in the city that I live in. It's a big city. Go to one of the smaller cities and try it there. I sat there for 6 hours waiting, and I finally had to leave because I had to go pick my child up from school.
Yep.
And I came back another day, and this time I showed up at 5:30 in the morning for when the place opened at 8:30 in the morning. And I was like the 25th person in line, and somebody came out at about 7:45 and counted the first 20 people in line and said, okay, that's where we cut it off for driver's license tests today. That's how many we can do today. Anyone after this point in line, if you want a test, you might as well leave because you're not going to get one today. And that's what it's like here. I said, I couldn't believe it. They ration driver's licenses here in Alabama. They only give out so many in a day. And it's not because there's any kind of law that limits it. It's because they don't have enough employees at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles to be able to test more people. And it's because there are so few people that they got for testing. The line is the same whether you want to transfer your license, you renew your license, or get a driver's test. You wait in the same line, and you wait for hours. And I look at all the people that are just sitting here waiting, and I'm thinking, what a waste of human potential. All these people could be out working and generating income. And no, you refuse to hire a few more people to work here, and you've got them all sitting here waiting for you. And then you say, well, if you want a state ID, all you got to do is go down to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. No, it is not that simple. If you want a state ID, it is not a simple process.
Well, yeah, and on a lot of Native American reservations, there aren't street addresses, so it's nearly impossible for them to get state IDs in places like South and North Dakota. And so those places, they're deeply red states, targeted that, and they made it part of state law that you have to have a street address in order to cast a vote, taking away the votes of all those Native Americans because primarily those Native Americans were going to vote for Democrats. And that seems to happen. And for one, it's for a couple of reasons, because as we were talking about earlier, part of a Republican doctrine is small government. So they think that small government means, gutting government of state employees and doing whatever they do with that money, because it's never reinvesting it into schooling or infrastructure. It usually goes to businesses. But that's what they believe in. So we can see it here in Michigan, which is a purple state. So we'll go back and forth from Republican leadership to Democratic leadership. When we had the Republican Governor Snyder, you went to the DMV. You was there for 8 hours, literally, because as you said, they just don't have the employees to. You go there now under Gretchen, and you're there for an hour. If that, you're there for an hour because they have employees there that move the lines along. So yeah, you're exactly right. And you're in a Republican red state that's been, you want to talk about Republican institutions, let's talk about Alabama. You're right there with Texas. So yeah, I saw it in North Carolina. There was a limited amounts of driver's licenses going out when I was 16 trying to get my driver's license. These red states seem to do that because their idea of big government is state employees, when oftentimes state employees are exactly what you need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, part of it is de facto voter suppression, because if you make it difficult for people to get the driver's license, the rich people are going to find a way to do it. And it's the poor and it's the minorities that are going to have problems getting IDs, and so they can't vote because they don't have IDs.
Yeah, and Alexandria is saying, I don't think Michigan rations IDs either. We don't, and in fact, they do check signatures. You can attest to this. Here in Michigan, when we vote, And I actually went and voted in person this year. I was going to vote by mail, but I got COVID. So when election day came, I was just over COVID, stock full of antibodies. I was the safest person in that room. And they take your ID, and this every time I go and vote in Michigan, they do that. They take your ID, and it goes through this long line, and they are checking everything about you. And they're checking that signature on that ID to make sure it lines up with the signature on your voter registration, everything. So that happens here in the state of Michigan, and yet the state of Michigan here is one of the ones that they're saying shouldn't count.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of weird,
Here in Alabama, they do check signature, but they're not that careful about it, which, I remember my two older daughters being told in high school, once you establish your signature, it has to remain the same for life. And I said, no, it doesn't. I have serious arthritis in my thumbs. My signature today does not look like it did 5 years ago. And you look at my dad. My dad is 87, and he's got a serious tremor in his hand, and his signature doesn't look anything like it did 20 years ago before he developed the tremor. And so there's any number of reasons why a person's signature can change.
Oh yeah. My signature is significantly more sloppy than it was when I was 20. I try to be neat with my handwriting when I was in my 20s. Now it's like you would think I'm a doctor writing this prescription, because you aren't going to read my signature. You're going to be like, what does this say? This doesn't say your name. What is this? Yeah, it changes over time. I think everybody's signature changes over time. I think that signature verification is nonsense. We already have to go through the hoops and bells of registering to vote. These things are all done through the same places, to where you're establishing your identification, you're getting your state IDs. It is a ridiculous way for them to cherry pick the voting rolls and subjugate the vote. It is. I mean, we saw it happen in Georgia in 2018 blatantly. Very, very, very blatantly. They didn't try to hide it at all. Like, Kemp was the Secretary of State. He controlled the election. The Secretary of State's the chief election official in every state, and he utilized that role and won that election for himself. It was corrupt, and Trump should have learned from Kemp, honestly, if he wanted to steal the election. Because Kemp did it.
I think Trump tried. He tried to shut down the post office before the election.
Yeah, he tried, and he had this strategy. Like, he took the wrong strategy. I mean, you've got to suppress the vote. So in order to do that, you really had to shut down the mail-in voting. And unfortunately, he was just hamstrung there because of the life situation that we're all living in. He tried to say it was a hoax, but unfortunately, people are dying. So we all know that it's not a hoax. So he was really hamstrung in his ability to take away the mail-in voting. If he could have been successful in forcing an in-person vote, he would have won in a landslide. And he knows that. He knows it. And that's why he's trying to take away those out of those mail-in votings in the states that he lost, because he understands. That's why he lost, because the pandemic hit. People were at home. Here in the state of Michigan, I mean, they sent you like five different envelopes in the mail. You haven't registered to vote by mail yet. Are you sure you're not going to want to vote by mail, because it's dangerous out there? Like, it would literally say stuff like that,
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they wanted people to vote by mail. There's not a doubt. Like, our governor has tried to follow the science. Unfortunately, there's a lot of right-wing fanatics that have called her unconstitutional for that, and are trying to get her unseated as our governor right now, because she followed the science and tried to. Yeah, I don't agree with her recent decision. Like, she's opening things and she's not opening things, and I don't agree with it. But at the same time, she's trying to save lives, so I'm not gonna nitpick that. January 16th, my business opens. I'll wait till January 16th. So, but she has a right-wing fanatics here trying to unseat her, like literally right now, trying to. There's something recall the governor. That's what they're trying to do right now, because she shut things down, and she told Trump to go shove it where the sun don't shine.
We've strayed a little from the original topic, and that is
Yeah, we did.
entirely my fault because I kind of led us down a few rabbit trails. But kind of to wrap up a little bit and go back to the original topic. Mo Brooks is my congressional representative, and he is the one that is leading the charge to call for Congress to overturn the election. And Tuberville, who, this was a bit of a surprise to me because I thought that the new senators would be sworn in the same day as the president, and they are not. The new senators will be sworn in 2 days before the special session of Congress. So Tuberville will be sworn in, I think it's January 3rd, and I think the special session is the 5th. So he will have been senator for all of 2 days, and his first act in office as senator is he plans to put forth a motion in the Senate to overturn the election as well. And so I would ask that everyone in the audience, send letters to Brooks and to Tuberville telling them what idiots they are and that this is not the thing to do. This is not good for the country. It's not good for our democracy. I've sent 2 letters to Mo Brooks already, and the first one that I sent, I should have brought up the email that he gave me back because it was, in fact, Naka, if you want to talk for a minute, I'm going to look for that and pull it up. Because this is what we're seeing.
I can always talk. My personal opinion is these people. If you're willing to overturn a free election, that's going to be your first act as a senator. I think you should be held accountable for that. I think that that's a treasonous act. I think that in the scope of the Constitution, we should hold you to account for your treason. And there's a couple Democrats along that hard line, and I agree with them. Unfortunately, establishment Democrats aren't there yet, but I think we should be. Like, how much treason are we going to take here? Like, we had it with Russia from the very get. We had it in the Ukraine, I believe it was, when the Ukraine, the whole impeachment thing was about. Just how much, now they're trying to, do a coup. How much treason is acceptable before we start calling it treason? So that's my position. Yeah, I'm an extremist.
I found it, and so I am going to bring it up. Bear with me until I get it. Oops, that's not the right page. There we go. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. This is from Congressman Mo Brooks, and it says, "Dear Mrs. Kelly Pearsall, thank you for contacting me to express your concern regarding the legitimacy of the recent election. I welcome the opportunity to respond. In my view, Democrats have become experts at voter fraud and election theft. By way of background, in 1993, Clinton, plus a Democrat House and a Democrat Senate, Democrats passed legislation that made it illegal to require prospective voters to establish they are American citizens before they can register to vote. The result, illegal aliens and lawful immigrants, both non-citizens, gained access to voter rolls."
That's just straight not true.
Oh, I know. This whole letter is full of falsehood. And it's obviously a form letter because I, wrote to him and said what a terrible idea this is. And he's coming back at me, with this form letter of why he's doing this. Later, Democrats worked hard in various states to bar photo identification that would establish whether a person voting is, in fact, the person who is an eligible U.S. citizen with a right to vote. Why did Democrats do this? To promote their ability to engage in voter fraud and election theft. This year, socialist Democrats, now we're socialists, strongly pushed mass mail voter schemes wherein ballots were sent to persons other than the registered voter who is supposed to get the ballot. No evidence of that. Why did Democrats do this? To again promote the ability of socialist Democrats to engage in voter fraud and election theft. Similarly, the U.S. Constitution states that Congress shall set election times. Congress set one day, November 3rd, 2020, as the day in which to vote in this recent election. Congress did not set an election week, an election month, or an election season. Congress set one day. Oops, I pounded my mouse there.
It happens.
with the exception of absentee ballots based on an inability to get to those polls on election day. And yet that's exactly what the vote-in ballots were, is absentee ballots. As I write this letter, my staff is doing research to determine whether Congress specifically authorized en masse mail-in voting that has been used by so many states. If there is no such authorization, then all mail-in voting in federal elections is illegal, and hence all those late counting ballots in the form of bias for Biden's claim to the presidency are void, and Donald Trump is the lawful re-elected president of the United States. No evidence of that. I mean, if we discounted all of the mail-in ballots, it's entirely possible that Trump still lost. And yet he's making this claim without any kind of evidence whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's the thing that's scary about Trump's playbook, because he's utilized that age-old fascist propaganda tool that you just say it enough and it's true. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans are just really, really dumb. I grew up in what was considered, at least at the time, I'm not sure how it is today, but when I was growing up in school in North Carolina, they had one of the worst school systems in the country. And I learned enough to know civics a little decently, and then I learned enough definitely to learn more as I grew older. But people are just really not. It has been in the culture for I don't know how long now, like for a long time. Well, it's just rude to talk about that. You can't have these really hard conversations at the dinner table because, you don't want to upset dad. He's had a long, hard day at work. And when in actuality, no, we should have been having those conversations all along, because people forgot what we did back in the 40s and 50s. Like what the greatest generation, we call them the greatest generation for a reason. And it's because they stood in the face of fascism after a long delay. We went and fought those Japanese folks, but we weren't messing with those fascists. Eventually we got there, and we call those people the greatest generation because they stood in the face of that fascism. And now we understand historically it was one of the greatest achievements of the modern age. It made the modern age what it is. It made America what it is, the superpower that it is, because when Europe was left in ashes, we were standing clean. And we have benefited from that since. And people have grown lazy, and they don't understand what fascism is. They don't understand what democracy is and how fragile it truly is. The forefathers spoke of that, but we have forgotten that. And we are facing that test right now. And a great chunk of this country is willing to just throw that all away to own the liberals. And that's because we've allowed it to get there, because we didn't have those conversations at those dinner tables. And we've got to have those hard conversations now. We've got to, because this country, civil war or civil insurgency, we are closer than ever. We've got to start talking to each other. That's where I'm falling. Like, we should have done it a long time ago. Now's our last chance. We gotta, as hard as it is, hard as it is.
One last push to finally get the orange man out of the office that he's in. And I don't think there's any question that we will be successful. The only question is, how much is it going to cost us, and how much more insanity do we have to face before it finally happens?
I do think he'll be gone. I do think he'll be gone. And America will have its reckoning, and we'll clean up the mess. Because that's one thing America has always done, is they cleaned up the mess and they put the Band-Aids where the Band-Aids need to go. Hopefully this time we won't put those Band-Aids there. We'll heal those wounds.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And with that, I think we're going to start wrapping up. Rage, do you have anything coming up that you would like to promote on your channel? The people that are watching today are not all the same as the ones that were here at the beginning. And so even though you did promote a little bit for your channel early, go ahead and plug what you've got coming up again.
Nothing really major coming up shortly. I am planning a edited video I'm going to put out on Christmas Day, and I think it's going to be an important edited video. I've been back and forth on whether to do it. But it's going to be talking about Christmas and COVID from the poor person's perspective. A lot of people are having Christmas this year. My daughter's having a Christmas, but she's not having a Christmas from me. This is the first year I'm never getting Christmas. I'm not able to get Christmas presents for my daughter because we've been shut down, and I've had no income. And the stimulus it's coming too late. So I don't see her getting a Christmas. So I am going to put out a video about that and just the harsh reality that millions of Americans are facing right now. Because I'm not the only one. A lot of people aren't getting their kids Christmas presents for the first time this year. So I do think that that's going to be an important video. I'm going to spend all day tomorrow determining how I'm going to approach it and make sure it's ready for Christmas Day, but that will be out Christmas Day.
Okay, very good. And I have a video that I will be putting out either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, depending on how long it takes me to finish it. And it's a response to John Piper. And it's a little more serious than what I wanted to do at Christmas, but I was really having a hard time finding something really to go with at Christmas. So I just went ahead and just did something that's pretty much the same thing that I normally do. But the big announcement that I do have is on January 12th is my next episode of Why Are We Here, where I bring in different YouTubers to talk about what they do and why. And I had announced before that on January 12th that V. LaBianca would be my guest. But what I just found out a couple hours ago is that Eric Murphy is coming too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I have I got both of them. I got V and Eric Murphy both coming January 12th. So do not miss January 12th. And I will continue streaming at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week. It's going to be something lighthearted. Maybe I'll do another ladies' night. But it's just going to be more of a fun time to talk and catch up with friends. And since we've had such a heavy topic, I do want to leave us on a little bit of a lighter note. And I saw a joke that I thought was so funny. And that is that if we need to bring Pete Buttigieg in 2024 and elect him so that he can get us some kind of a national health care program, and we will all have booty care.
That is funny.
And with that, everyone have a Merry Christmas. Naka, thank you for coming. Thank you for your opinions. You also have a Merry Christmas.
Oh, yeah,
and
thank you.
Yeah, and everyone just live your life.